So I don't have slides. I just have. Oh, that's better. I just have notes in my cool notebook. And the thing that I was going to talk about today, that it's an idea that's really kind of captured my imagination, is this idea of an everyday cyborg. And it's a kind of a mashup between Anne Oakley and Donna Haraway. My thoughts on it are very much an incomplete take on Donna Haraway because we don't have a week to spend on her in order to do a complete take on her views of the cyborg. And it's the thing that's really interested me is how far away from the trope of a cyborg, i.e. something like Robocop or Terminator or Iron Man, a real cyborg actually is. The fact that cyborgs are a walk amongst us, that the joining of man and machine is actually much more subtle than Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's all around us. And the fact that one can actually be a cyborg from conception, literally, with the first IVF baby, the first test tube baby, as she was called, Louise Brown, was born in 1978, and it was heralded as this huge step forward, this huge event, and I think she was probably regarded as a bit of a freak. And now it's still. It still kind of takes us by surprise a little bit occasionally, I think, when we think about it. Like I met up with a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and she was there with her baby who she'd had through IVF, and the baby was sat there and looking all, snotty and I guess cute, if you like that sort of thing. And she said, I look at my baby and I said, I still can't believe that just a little while ago she was in a petri dish in a lab in Dundee. So it still does surprise us, and I think that probably reproductive technology is the place that the everyday cyborg is both most apparent and most subtle, and they've been there really for a very long time. If we think of a cyborg as being some sort of melding of man and a form of technology, right back to, I think of contraception, the Egyptians using crocodile dung as a cervical cap, which, in addition to being absolutely disgusting, presumably they sterilized it somehow. I really don't know how, but that again would be a scientific procedure. It's a way in which technology became part of humans. Right up until now, there was a talk given at a symposium last week about bioethics and embodiment, in which one of the speakers said that scientists have predicted that external wombs are going to be available in the next 10 to 20 years. And I've never been pregnant, never had a kid, so I still have this slightly romanticized view of what pregnancy could be like, this beautiful joining of the woman and the baby and this miraculous process, and the Disney version, basically. So I thought, well, who on earth would want to put their baby in an artificial womb in a laboratory surrounded by scientists, and who would trust a scientist to look after their baby? So I did a very, very small survey of my friends and various family members who've had kids, all of whom said, yes, it sounded like a great idea, thank you, if only they could afford it. And so I started looking at kind of Haraway's ideas of how far into our lives technology comes, and looking at my own area of female sexual dysfunction, that the companies that are competing to try and find a treatment. And I started thinking about what exactly is it, what kind of sex is it that they're trying to produce for these women? And really, it's cyber sex, or cyborg sex. What they want to do is to find a treatment that will take biological sex, biological interaction, add a bit of science, and make it, they're saying that they're going to make it fabulous and wonderful. And the latest contender for this is a testosterone nasal gel, that's being trialled by a company called Trimel Pharmaceuticals in Canada. And so far, over the course of an 84-day clinical trial, for women who've got a condition known as female orgasmic disorder, which means that they have trouble reaching orgasm, the gel is managed, it's had some effect. They've managed to increase the average number of orgasms in the course of 84 days from 1.7 to 2.3. So it's hardly likely to be releasing a horde of nymphomaniacs onto the world, but Trimel is very happy. They're very excited about these results and very enthusiastic. Wall Street doesn't seem to be quite so enthused. Trimel's share prices are still sitting at 70 cents a share, so they're not as excited as Trimel thinks they should be. It might be a good time to buy Trimel shares if anyone's looking for shares to buy, but I don't know how well this gel is actually going to do. And also, it's a kind of, as an interruption to sex, it's having this sort of pump action bottle with a substance that's created in a lab in it. This is like a sort of everyday cyborg component. Possibly less off-putting to say, excuse me while I squirt this gel up my nose, than to say, excuse me while I stick my crocodile dung in. So I guess we've moved on a bit and it's a bit cleaner. And I was looking at as well at the idea of other body parts that are less subtle than the things of the bionic arm and things like that, one of which is the breast implants, which there are now a couple of different sort of, I suppose you could call it progress, with breast implants, and that they have a serial number that can be scanned through the skin. And they're also in production are ones with a tracking device, so that if a woman has a breast implant and is kidnapped, you can find her on the GPS. Yeah, using a tiny little can't remember the word, but it's a tiny little thing that goes in the breast implant. So it is a kind of whole new take on keeping up with the Kardashians. It's like an entire cyborg family with all the work that they've had done. So going back to Anne Oakley and Donna Haraway, I'd read them both before I arrived at Edinburgh into this department. Anne Oakley she's pretty sedate in her style, but it's very striking, her arguments in defense of women, particularly looking at the effects of medical colonization on them. Donna Haraway I'd read, but really I hadn't really got much further with her than writing WTF ? Repeatedly in the margins. So yeah, swearing at her was about as well as I'd done. But now that I've had to actually go back, and thanks to Pablo, who's unfortunately not here, on the Gender Science and Technology course, he made us read her Cyborg manifesto. I had to go back and be a little more patient. And obviously I'm not going to do anything like a sort of interpretation of her, because as they say, we don't have a week. But just to say what appealed, really. And her Cyborg manifesto, apparently it began as a 5-page piece for the Socialist Review about the future of socialist feminism in the right-wing world of Thatcher and Reagan, and then it became this call to action. And what it is about her that I think is just so it is so exciting is the fact that there's this kind of poetic and utopian and almost fairy tale quality about her writing. But she's also a rebel. I mean, she describes Foucault as flaccid, for example, and says that goddess feminism is just dead. And she convinces you to keep going with her, to stick with her, to stop just swearing at her and try and work out what WTF she means. What really kind of sold them to me was that they reminded me in different ways, and in a STIS way, I think, in a whole new angle way, of why I fell in love with feminism in the first place. So that's it.